Is the plan kind of to start trying to be competitive, if you will, and addressing more of the needs starting this offseason, if you will?
I think our plan is just the same, is to bring the best pipeline of players together that we can, and to build from there. But that's we have to keep our eye on the ball of bringing the single best set of players together.
The Philadelphia 76ers select Joel Embiid.
Jay McDaniels, a little lean in, threw it to himself off. Backboard by Sampson, left in denial by Noel. Michael Carter-Williams not lacking for any confidence.
Breaking news tonight here on SportsCenter. Philadelphia getting Andrew Bynum.
The 76ers picked up their 26th straight loss.
123-70, third largest loss in Sixers history.
Carter-Williams, in the middle of his second NBA season, is on his way to the Milwaukee Bucks.
This is a typical NBA team photo. If the 2014 through 15 Sixers made a photo, this is how many players would have to be involved. That's 25 total players, the most people to ever play for a single team in a season in NBA history. Oh yeah, and 7 of these guys are rookies, 19 are 24 years old or less, and 14 are undrafted. 1 year, 1 team, 14 undrafted players. I know. How does a thing like this even come to be? That is the exact question we will be jumping into and exploring in this video. But before we hop into it, please just be sure to subscribe. You can see how long this video is. Just a heads up, there is so much detail and research put into this one. There's a bunch of graphs and charts and art I created and put into this video. This one just took so much time, and I'd really appreciate you clicking that little red button. I genuinely want to make more big projects like these, and trust me, you're not going to want to miss out on the rise of this channel. Things are going to get a lot bigger and a lot better, so just do the quick and easy act of subscribing so you don't miss out on any of it. Okay, with that, let's start this deep dive on the weirdest roster in NBA history. Look, here's the short answer to how this crazy team was formed. Sam Hinkie. At this point, I honestly don't think anybody has talked about or cared about this man in years, ever since he stepped down from his position of the GM of the 76ers. But he was once extremely well known for his unapologetic commitment to tanking. Hinkie held the philosophy that great NBA teams become great all of a sudden, and any small steps that could lead to the team becoming only somewhat better weren't worth making. Here's a quote he said regarding this very topic. What we look at is, how do we add to what we're doing in a way that will get us closer to our goal? We don't think it will be necessarily linear, that every year you will add 5 wins and after 10 years you will get 50. That's not the way we think about the world. We think that it comes at fits and starts, and you have to be prepared to put yourself in a position that you might be able to make big leaps. In other words, the guy has no patience and doesn't want to improve the team if it isn't a massive improvement. Alright, so with this in mind, let's talk about Hinkie's grand plan for the 2015 season. Just get everybody. He very clearly wanted to make a massive leap, and to do that, he needs himself a star. And to get a star, he needs to try over and over and over and over again through a trial and error process that caused the team to have, well, 25 players. Now, let's go down the list of these players. How did any of them even end up here? There are only 15 players allowed on an NBA team, and only 13 are allowed to be available to play for a game. So Hinkie is going to have to filter through players very quickly throughout this season to hit his record of 25 guys. Quick disclaimer, there's a lot of charts and visuals in this video, and any names that you see highlighted in red are the names of the players that will be on this 2015 team that this entire timeline is leading up to. This 2015 squad didn't have anyone that had been on the team for any longer than 2 years, which is kind of wild considering just how many players are on this team. But anyways, the first player to get there is Jason Richardson. Richardson was acquired in this deal on August 10th, 2012. The deal that got Dwight Howard to LA, Iguodala to Denver, Vucevic to Orlando, and most importantly, at least in our case, J. Rich to Philly. This is probably one of the biggest trades in NBA history. There are so many moving pieces, and the Sixers are probably the biggest losers of it all. They gave up Andre Iguodala and Nikola Vucevic to get a center that would never play for them, and a veteran that never really did anything for the team either. So yeah, that's the backstory of the first of 24 more to come. Ladies and gentlemen, strap in your seatbelts. This one is gonna be a long and bumpy ride. The next important date will come almost exactly a full year later, on June 27th, 2013, the day of the NBA draft. Hinkie is notorious for stacking up on picks, and this year he has 3. The first was used on Michael Carter Williams, who at first looked like the steal of the draft, but we later learned that he's really just an average lottery pick at best. He's kind of the star of this 2015 25-player squad, but he won't last on the team too long. 35th overall came Glenn Rice Jr., who was immediately dealt to the Wizards in exchange for Nate Walters and Arsalan Kazemi. Philly then dealt Walters to Milwaukee that same freaking day for Ricky Leto, who signed his rookie contract with the Mavericks. Finally, they took Pierre Jackson 42nd overall, and he too never played for the Sixers. This night, in and of itself, encapsulates everything you need to know about Hinkie. The guy made 5 deals in 4 hours this night, and the only result he got out of it was a year and a half of Michael Carter Williams. All the other players he acquired, they never played for the Sixers, meaning that nothing at all came out of the rest of his wild shenanigans. Alright, so it's now July 12th of the same year, and Hinkie makes another blockbuster move, sending away Drew Holiday and Pierre Jackson, the guy he just drafted a few weeks ago, to the Pelicans for Nerlens Noel and a 2014 first. That's right, in return for Drew Holiday and Andre Iguodala, the 2 franchise cornerstones of this team, they got back Nerlens Noel and Jason Richardson. The next very day, another move was made. Philly finally made a solid move and acquired Furkan Aldemir for a pick that won't be conveyed, so they just got a player for literally nothing. A month later, essentially the same thing happened. Tony Wroten was handed to the Sixers for yet another pick that wasn't conveyed. If you don't know what a pick not being conveyed means, I don't fully know either. Sporting Logically explained it to me pretty briefly on Twitter. I'll throw up what he says it means because he knows a lot more than me on this subject, but going off of at least my interpretation of his word, all that it means is that in these 2 trades, the Rockets and Grizzlies never got those picks. So there's now 2 pretty massive W's on the side of Hinkie. The comeback arc is beginning. Yet another month passes and another signing was made. Hinkie took a swing at undrafted free agent Hollis Thompson and signed him to a multi-year contract. Now, this is a name probably only Sixers fans are aware of, but he actually wasn't all that bad. Thompson spent 4 years with the team and was arguably their best shooter for some time, especially in the 2015 2015 season. One day before the season started, on October 28th, they signed yet another undrafted free agent in power forward Brandon Davies. Halfway through that year, the team trades Spencer Hawes away to the Cavaliers for Henry Sims and a 2014 second-round pick that will become Jerami Grant. Sims is actually really good for the Sixers, averaging 12 and 7 as their starting center, but even Philly knows that he's only performing so well because of how bad this team is. And of course, Jerami Grant will be a great addition. He's not on the team just yet, but will be kicking off his rookie year in a 76ers jersey next season. So the Sixers ended 2014 with an atrocious 19-63 record, and were awarded with the 3rd pick for that year's draft. Hinkie selected Joel Embiid with that pick, which we all know would be a fantastic selection, but he's gonna miss the entire season, so he doesn't count towards this list of 25 players, and honestly isn't that relevant to this timeline. They then took Elfrid Payton 10th overall, KJ McDaniels 32nd overall, Jerami Grant 39th overall, Russ Smith 47th overall, Vasilij Micic 52nd overall, and Nemanja Dangubic 54th overall. Yup, that's 7 total picks. 12% of the entire draft is exclusively Sixers picks. In classic Hinkie fashion, Philadelphia then made another immediate draft day trade, giving up Elfrid Payton for Dario Saric and 2 picks that would be used after the 2015 season. Saric would join Philly 2 years after this moment, so unfortunately he won't make it in time to be a part of the 25-player team. Philly will be kind of quiet for the entirety of June and nearly all of August leading up to the season, but on August 23rd they finally break their silence and involve themselves in another groundbreaking trade, the notorious Kevin Love Andrew Wiggins trade. Although this deal is mainly concerning Cleveland and Minnesota, Philly sacrificed Thaddeus Young in the move and got 2 more players in return, veteran Luke Baamute and undrafted guard Alexei Shved. On September 15th, they also signed combo forward Jakar Sampson, and 13 days later claimed small forward Chris Johnson off of waivers, a name that only people that are dedicating their evenings to tracking every random player on the 2015 76ers team would know of. The guy has no lasting legacy at all. On October 7th, they made 2 more signings, snatching Aaron Gordon's brother, Drew Gordon, and Malcolm Lee. 2 more irrelevant nothing players. Are you noticing a trend here? 2 days before the year begun, they signed big man Malcolm Thomas to a multi-year contract. And with that move, this roster is finally set and finished to kick off the 2014 through 15 season. After 4 pages of a script worth of moves and signings, Philly is now rolling out with a core of Nerlens Noel, Michael Carter-Williams, Jason Richardson, Tony Wroten, Luke Baamute, KJ McDaniels, Hollis Thompson, Jerami Grant, Chris Johnson, Henry Sims, Brandon Davies, Alexei Shved, Jakar Sampson, Furkan Aldemir, Drew Gordon, Malcolm Lee, and finally Malcolm Thomas. That's 17 players, with 9 being undrafted, meaning that they need 8 more guys to hit that 25-player marker, which also means that somehow, someway, Sam Hinkie will find a way to get 8 new faces on this team mid-season. Alright, so with the initial roster established, how do things start off for this team? Game 1 of the season, 12-point loss. Game 2, 12-point loss. Game 3, 18-point loss. Game 4, 10-point loss. Game 5, 2-point loss. Game 6, 3-point loss. Game 7, 32-point loss. Game 8, 53-point loss. And Game 9, 1-point loss. After this atrocious 9-game losing streak, Hinkie made what I personally believe to be his best move ever. He signed undrafted free agent Robert Covington. Talk about an impressive massive find. Covington was an absolute nobody, and now I'm pretty sure everybody watching this knows his name. I guess when you take a shot at literally 10 undrafted players in 1 year, one is bound to be something. But I'll give Hinkie credit where credit is due. This was just an objectively good move. However, his presence isn't enough. The 9-game losing streak turns into a 17-game one. At this point in time, Philly didn't make all too many moves outside of waiving players, as they said goodbye to Drew Gordon on October 25th, Malcolm Thomas on November 10th, and Chris Johnson on November 15th. This opened up a bunch of space for a lot of new guys to eventually come in and play for the team this season, but for now, they're not there yet. On January 16th, they offered a 10-day contract to undrafted free agent Larry Drew II. This team has so many players, and yet Larry Drew is only their second point guard. On February 5th, after an 11-9 start to the year, Hinkie signed yet another undrafted free agent in Tim Frazier. If you haven't already noticed, the term undrafted free agent is popping up a lot in this video, and it will only continue to be that way. February 19th is a crazy day for the Sixers. As we approach the trade deadline date, they make 4 very important moves for their team all in one day. First, they said goodbye to the player many thought would be the future of the Sixers in Michael Carter Williams, and essentially got nothing in return. Phoenix got involved and acquired Brandon Knight in the 3-team deal, and Philly got a future first-round pick that isn't relevant to this timeline. I can applaud Hinkie for not seeing MCW as a long-term asset for this team, but dude, he's the reigning rookie of the year and is still playing well in his sophomore season. If all you can get out of that is a first-round pick, that's just not a good trade. This deal got the 76ers 0 players, but the loss of MCW also means that there's now another roster spot open, and we all know that Hinkie won't hesitate to fill it. The second move on that day was a trade that got them JaVale McGee, who joins Andrew Bynum as the second random big man that you forgot ever played in a Sixers jersey. They traded away the rights to Cenk Akrol, someone who never even played for the team, for JaVale, a 2016 first-round pick, and a guy whose name is so impressively long that it sounds fake. Dude really tried to squeeze in the entirety of the alphabet in a first name. What even is this? They then shipped off their rookie KJ McDaniels, who was actually getting Philly fans really hyped after a solid start to the season, where he brought back and popularized the Tracy McGrady off the backboard self-pass dunk. In return, they got back Isaiah Cannon, a solid guard that was one of the first players to jump on the 3-point shooting bandwagon. In 2016, really only Steph Curry was attempting 7 3-pointers a game. So for a role player averaging 26 minutes a night to do that same very thing, that's just impressive. And the fourth and final move of the night, and yes, remember this is all happening on February 19th, gave Philly the second half of their backcourt, Ish Smith. They claimed him on waivers, and he'd also break out for the Sixers, putting up averages of 12 and 6. Not half bad. Although a backcourt of Smith and Cannon sounds pretty bad on paper and is definitely below average, their desperation to prove themselves and make the most of the fact that they were kind of handed a team to lead despite doing nothing to deserve it led to them being pretty middle of the pack, which was above expectations. These two random underdog players getting 30 minutes a night and playing their hearts out is a fun memory for sure, but I'm also sure Sixers fans are happy that those days are over. Alright, so with February 19th finally out of the way, we have 23 players now on this roster. Only 2 players remain, and the first of those 2 is world-renowned NBA bust Thomas Robinson. You know, the guy drafted over Damian Lillard. He was claimed on waivers by the Sixers on February 22nd, only 3 days after all the shenanigans that Hinkie pulled. And then, finally, on March 7th, the 25th player is signed. After being waived by the Minnesota Timberwolves, Glenn Robinson III joined the squad. And with that, we've done it. Marked exactly how each and every one of these 25 players somehow found their way onto this team. Ironically, despite all of Hinkie's talks about trying trying to form a super team as quickly as possible, the Sixers had more players than wins this year. The second season in a row this happened to them. There also were a plethora of players he traded for or acquired that never actually played a game for them, but are actually officially listed on the team's roster. So maybe they count, I don't know. Guys like Andrew Bynum, Andre Karolinko, Jorge Gutierrez, Ronnie Turiaf, and Ronald Roberts are all there listed on the roster. So technically speaking, this team has 30 total players. Oh man. Alright, so you might be wondering, with all these players, what the heck did Philly's rotations look like? Well, just look at the first 8 games of the season, and I think they give a really good idea of just how complicated and messy things were. In the first 2 games, Tony Wroten, Hollis Thompson, Chris Johnson, Henry Sims, and Nerlens Noel started for the team. For Game 3, Coach Brett Brown replaces Johnson with Luke Baamute. That lineup lasts for a game, and then he takes out Sims for Brandon Davies. That lineup lasts for 2 games, and then Davies is taken out for Jakar Sampson, while Henry Sims replaces Noel at the starting center spot. And finally, for Game 8, KJ McDaniels starts in the place of Jakar. And that only scratches the surface. This team never had the same starting lineup for any longer than 8 games. 8. Their most common and most frequent starting lineup they only had for 8 out of 82 games. What the heck? As a matter of fact, they brought out 41 different starting lineups this season. I don't know what the record for the most variations of a starting lineup in a season is, but this has to be it. I mean, look, it's still going down your screen. Still going. Still going. I mean, we could really be here all day. Yup, still going. You know what? Play some music in the background while we sit here and wait. This will take a while. Honestly, I don't think this even rightfully puts this insanity into perspective. Check out how I had to manually record this on my notes, which are a lot less organized than this graphic I just showed you. Look at how many lineups there are. Look at this. Statistically, this team had 11 players average 9+ points per game. 3 players averaged 6+ assists per game, 8 players averaged more than 1 steal per game, and 7 players made 1 or more threes per game. With that being said, only 7 players out of these 25 stayed on the Sixers for the entire season. Everyone else was either traded, waived, or acquired in the middle of the year. With so many players constantly being on this team, nobody could really get comfortable or establish a role, as only 2 out of these 25 players averaged 30+ minutes a game, which really is the average amount of minutes a normal NBA starter plays. 25 players, 1 year. I just spent way too much time mapping out how this atrocity of a team came to be, but even with it still explained for me, it still sounds crazy. Sam Hinkie is the king of trial and error. Mostly error if we're being honest, but I can respect the commitment. So many of these players are just random no-names that I've never heard of and that would have never even had a shot to make the NBA had Hinkie not have been so desperate. Looking back at that quote that he had about how great teams make the jump to greatness pretty quickly, his experiment that was the 2015 season honestly makes sense to me. He knew that he didn't have a star on his team and wasn't fooled by the early rise of Michael Carter-Williams and the hype that surrounded Nerlens Noel. I know there's a lot of GMs out there that would have been, but Hinkie was stubborn. He wanted that superstar. Pretty much every player he signed was given at least a few games where they played played a lot of minutes, making this year pretty much just a tryout. Hinkie was filtering players in and out and seeing who would be his team's Michael Jordan, but the best he got was Robert Covington. I can't tell you if Hinkie is a genius or a fool, but I will say that I miss him. Those Sixers teams, regardless of how bad, were always entertaining and ever changing. Random players broke out for 20-point games all the time before falling off a cliff. News dropped of new players being signed practically every week, and of course, I will always have a soft spot in my heart for that Ish Smith-Isaiah Cannon backcourt. Now, is it realistic to expect to find an absolute superstar in the way Hinkie wanted to? God no. But at least at the same time, what more did you want him to do? He made sure that he was getting at least one draft pick in almost all of the deals he made, and in a season that was going to be bad regardless, what's the harm in signing 25 players? What's the harm in getting 7 rookies, 14 undrafted players, and 19 under the age of 25? The truth is that there isn't any harm. Hinkie lost on some deals, won some others, but at the end of the day, we all knew he cared. We knew that he would stop at nothing and dedicate days, weeks, and months to acquiring the rights to Furkan Aldemir, Jakar Sampson, and Hollis Thompson, and then would wake back up the next day and do it all over again, fighting tooth and nail for a guy like Malcolm Lee. And for a team that lacked pretty much everything else, their general manager boasted a level of dedication that every team hoped to get out of theirs. You guys can decide for yourselves if he was good or not, but that fact simply can't be denied. Thank you guys so much for watching. If you enjoyed this one, you guys can of course subscribe to the channel. This was a big one. It took a lot to make this one, put a lot of effort into it, so if you guys enjoyed, please be sure to support the channel in any way you think that you can. And with that, stay safe out there.